Hello, class. Today we will be talking about the chapter titled The Family. We have a lot of really interesting information in this chapter, and I'd like to go over some of the nuts and bolts with you. So, to begin, we really need to understand what the purpose of the family really is. And while there are lots of different things that our families provide for us, one of the biggest takeaways is that the family is part of the purpose of a family is to care for and to socialize their young. And this socialization is extremely important. Socialization, as defined by your book, is the process by which children acquire the beliefs, motives, values, and behaviors that are deemed significant and appropriate by older members of their society. Now, the socialization by the family unit actually serves broadly our larger society in three ways. First, it regulates children's behavior, shows children how to regulate their behavior. Two, it promotes personal growth. And finally, we need that socialization because it perpetuates social order. It helps all of us be able to function on a regular basis without individuals going around kind of engaging in behavior that would sort of create mass chaos. Most researchers actually sort of reject the idea that socialization is unidirectional and that it only happens from the perspective of the parent. In fact, most modern researchers would actually argue that socialization comes from many different perspectives. And so Bronfenbrenner was one such researcher, and he suggested that we actually take a look at this socialization from a systems approach, or what he called the comprehensive systems approach. And this approach stresses that one, children are actually influencing the behavior and child-rearing practices of their parents, and also that families are actually fairly complex social systems, meaning that they are complex networks. They have reciprocal relationships that each affect each other, etc. I'll talk with you in just a little bit about a family systems theory proposed by Belinsky. Bronfenbrenner's ecological model argues that the developing person is embedded in kind of a series of different environmental systems. And each of these environmental systems then interact with one another to create the person that we are, right? So you could consider each of our environments as sort of nested structures, each of them inside the next, and each of them interacting with one another. So Bronfenbrenner's model looks something like this. And he argues that we have, or suggests rather, that we have these different systems. And I'd like to kind of talk you through each of these systems and, maybe what we could consider as examples for each of these. So the first system that we have is our microsystem. So this is that kind of yellow area here. The microsystem, Bronfenbrenner argued, is a setting in which individuals live. So this could be, where the person's family, their peers, their school, etc. Our mesosystem is this kind of darker blue layer right here, involves an interaction between the microsystem or connections kind of between these different contexts. So an example of this might be kind of family experiences and its relationship to school experiences. So if you have a family and they kind of provide you sort of rich experiences, maybe you have memberships to museums and you travel frequently, right? And so you've got all of these different kind of experiences that you engage in with your family. This might also translate to the types of experiences that you might have in your school environment. So a family who can afford to have these really rich kind of family interactions and family environments and experiences are probably have children who go to schools that also have these very rich kind of school environments. Maybe they have access to the most cutting edge technology and the most, educated classroom teachers, right? Something like that. So each of these things are actually interrelated because families, again, if they can afford to do so, right, may choose to then live in school districts or neighborhoods that provide that kind of same environment in a school setting as which they would have in their home environment setting. Okay. So then our next environment, or our next system would be the exosystem. And this would be kind of this sort of teal blue right here. And this consists of links between social settings in which the individual does not have an active role, but it does influence the immediate context. So what would be an example of this? Well, a husband or a child's experience at home may be influenced then by a mother's experience at work. So mom goes to work, mom has a really crappy day, while husband and child don't work at the same place mom does, right? They don't come there. How mom feels, how mom is treated affects mom, and mom might then come home and have a sort of different interaction then with her children or her spouse whenever she gets home. She had a bad day at work. She might, not be as interactive as she normally is with her child or with her spouse. We then have our macro system here, and this is kind of that greenish blue. And this involves the culture in which individuals live. And then finally, down here, you've got this green section, and this is the chronosystem. And this consists of the patterning of environmental events and transitions over the life course, as well as socio-historical circumstances, so events that actually impact us, that might significantly contribute to our development. So for example, let's take divorce. Having your parents go through a divorce will in fact influence and impact the child, right? However, researchers have also found that the negative effects of divorce on children often peak in the first year after the divorce. So we see kind of the biggest negative effects happening immediately after the divorce, and then kind of tapering off sometime thereafter. This kind of gives you an idea of Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory, and then also each of the systems that are involved and the interactions between each of these systems when we kind of comprehensively think about the theory as a whole. Another researcher, Bielski, gave us the dynamic systems theory, or the family as a systems theory. And Bielski suggested that the family is actually much like a human body, that each of the parts of the family, each of the people in the family kind of interacts with one another like parts in a human body. They're interrelated. We need all of these parts to work, but they all impact one another. So we can take, for example, our nuclear family, right? And here we've got our infant and how our infant behaves and develops. But our infant's behavior influences the parenting, and parenting influences the infant's behavior, right? So now each of the individuals or part of this family unit contribute to one another. So let's take another. We have our marital relationship here, and marital relationships influence parenting, but parenting also influences marital relationships. So let's say mom and dad are having a very sound marital relationship. They might be in sync in terms of the type of parenting that they do. They deal with a challenging situation, but they're on the same page. So it goes back, reinforces kind of that strong relationship that they had. Vice versa, we might have two parents that each have different parenting styles that might cause a little bit of arguments or be the source of some arguments or discord within the relationship. And now these parents, that sort of disagreement between the two of them on how they should parent their child influences their marital relationship, right? So they are interacting with one another. You can kind of consider that each of the people on the family unit, how they develop, how they grow, is also contingent upon others within that family unit, right? And how we behave influences others, how they behave influences us. So all of this makes the family to be constantly changing and growing, and a constant evolving structure. It's because of this that we can consider the family unit to be sort of this complex system, right? And so families, each person in the family, as we just mentioned, is developing, and they're doing so kind of in their silo, but part of that development is contingent upon other members of that family, right? So each of these then influences other members of the family. This doesn't even take into account that families themselves are embedded in other contexts, right? Culture or subcultural contexts. And each of these influence our development actually as well. When we take a look at the evolution of kind of marriage relationships in the United States, or just kind of changes that we've noted, I want to share a couple of graphs with you. The first sort of shows that there is an increase in our age, or individuals' age, at first marriage in the United States. So while in the 1950s we had males that were a little around 23 and then women around 20, by the time we get to 1998, we're seeing that our men are closer to 27 and women kind of being closer to 24, 25. In fact, we actually see now for most individuals that first age of the age at first marriage is actually much closer to 30. So almost 26 or 27 now for women. We also see that there is an increase in the number of single adults, particularly between the ages of 30 to 34. And while we can kind of see in the 1970s, there were much fewer individuals in that age group that were single. By the time we get to even 1998, you see a rather large increase. This has only increased further since the 90s, and now we have significantly more individuals who are single adults in their 30s. A lot of this is related to educational attainment or jobs, right? And sort of working on careers or career focus. All of these things also influence that kind of pushing of single adults, right, between the ages of 30 to 34. Now, the other thing is we also see an increase in cohabitation in the United States. These are people who are living together outside of the confines of marriage, right? And so we see this huge increase after the 70s in the number of individuals that cohabitate in the United States. Interestingly, when we take a look at divorce rates in the United States, right, we can kind of see the divorce rate in relation to the number of years married. And so here, this is kind of related to how many years you are married. This is sort of the percentage. If you kind of note here, we're seeing a peak, kind of a little bit less than 10. You may have heard of the 7-year itch. We actually see divorce rates kind of starting to increase around that time, sort of peaking somewhere thereafter, and then having a significant drop off. So once we get to probably about 11 years, maybe 11 or 12 years of marriage, we see a huge decrease in those divorce rates, and then kind of tapering down and sort of steadying out. And these are some of the rather interesting things we've noticed in terms of kind of the changes that we've seen in families, changes that we've seen in marriage rates, cohabitation, and divorce rates as well. All right, so that kind of ends the first part of this lecture, and we'll be kind of picking up, and I'll have another video here in just a little bit showing you some of these differences in parenting styles. All right, I'll catch up with you soon. Bye.